Welcome to the SkirtWork Podcast. Welcome back to SkirtWork, Manda.
Hello, Lisa. Lovely to see you. And we are ladies in black today for people watching. And no, we don't coordinate, but obviously we've worked and known each other so long, we're even dressing alike now, Lisa.
Well, it is Friday the 13th.
That's
so
right.
maybe...
Oh, it is, of course. Yes, when we're recording it.
And I do see that there's a new Beetlejuice movie.
Oh, so, yes, I have seen that.
So maybe we're just channeling a little bit of one.
That was very good. Well, that's a nice segue into what we're going to talk about today, because Lisa and I, quite often at the end of when we have a bit of a chat about, well, very serious issues, we sort of have a chat about what we're watching and what we're listening to and what we're reading. And we thought we'd just do the whole time on it today. Yes. Because we thought, well, why not?
Well, it sort of comes about because we were speaking with somebody at a lunch that we were at, and we were recommending TV shows. And whilst Manda and I have wildly different views on a lot of topics, not that any of you would realise that at this point.
We've been in lockstep quite a bit lately.
We've been furiously agreeing with each other for months now.
Yes.
But we have the same love for the same types of television shows and movies and podcasts. So I wanted to sort of touch on that because there's a common theme, and it's not an uncommon theme with women, which is the love of true crime and crime shows. And I remember reading a piece on this some time ago about why does gory true crime appeal to women, and there was lots of reasoning, but one of the comments that came out, which struck me as being quite true, is it's a bit like fairy tales for children, not the modern fairy tales, but you know, the old fairy tales, the Brothers Grimm. They were written as warnings to children. So when you think about Hansel and Gretel, they go wandering off in the woods and bad things happen. It's kind of a warning to children, stay close to home, go wandering off in the woods. So there was always a lesson in the story. And there is, I feel, often for women, they're inherently taking a lesson from the true crime and even a lot of the crime shows, which is, again, reinforcing that don't go walking after dark on your own, and be careful where you are.
The Texas killing fields.
Definitely stay clear of the I-45.
Yeah, we'll get to that one. Goodness.
But it just reinforces the whole lessons that we learn as young, even from when we're children, all through our lives, to take care, be aware of who you're with and where you are, and also sometimes bad things happen even when you do all that. But I want to segue from that to a show that we both would have watched when it first came out 8 million years ago, which is relevant from a feminist point of view, and two reasons. One is it has an incredibly strong female lead character played by a sensational actress. So the show itself dealt with her struggles to be in that role in a male-dominated environment, but also a lot of the storylines were very much about crime and how it impacts female, and that is Prime Suspect.
Now, this came out, this is back in the day, people under, I don't know, 30 or 25, when you had appointment television. And that meant, I think it came out on the ABC here in Australia, which tended to pick up all the British productions, starring the inimitable Dame Helen Mirren. And it came out, I think it was, look, correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, I think it was the 90s, but it would have been 90, 91, 92. So and this is appointment television meant that it was on at, say, 8:30 on Wednesday night. And if you weren't there sitting in front of your TV, that's it. We did have a few VHSs, but if you forgot to press record, it was never repeated. It was no on-demand viewing. And if you missed it, that was it. And that's how I was saying to you a little earlier today, how with streaming services now, I've actually gone back and watched, and I watched this not long ago, again, starting at the beginning and then in sequence watching without a week's break, or as I pointed out, Channel 9 here in Sydney, yes, I'm looking at you, who advertised many years ago was a new episode of either The Sopranos or West Wing, and repeated the previous season. uproar. That's all I'm saying. And this is before social media. But I think letters to the editor, quite furiously written. But with Prime Suspect, it was very interesting because you had to make the appointment to watch it on a certain night. And this was quite a unique show because, and I know we probably all think it's a little cliched now, but it wasn't then. And we're only talking 34 years ago. She's a detective chief inspector in a northern town. They don't really specify which town. And of course, she's the lead. She's female, attractive, blonde, petite, with all these blokes. Now, I know for people listening to this thinking, wow, there's so many of those. Well, there wasn't that many then, if any. And in fact, what it did, Helen Mirren, Dame Helen, had been quite a big star. She had her breakout role in Age of Consent with James Mason and as a 19-year-old. And this thing resurrected her career. Not that I think she was ever in the doldrums, but I mean, she really hit the big time. And as we know, she's an Academy Award winner now, and she's just a national treasure, of course, in the UK, all around the world. And Lisa and I just think she's fabulous because she also, it just looks fabulous. So just looks great. And one of the earlier women to actually let their hair go grey.
Yes, well, obviously I'm Helen Mirren.
Well, not colour it. I should say let it go grey, and that's right. So Lisa and I do channel Dame Helen, of course, as you can see. So and what was so interesting about that is that the first episode, I haven't researched this just for this podcast, but was about a transsexual prostitute, and it was played by Peter Capaldi, and a lot of people would know him as either Malcolm Tucker in The Thick of It. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous show, but also, of course, Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. And this was one of his earlier roles, and I think Prime Suspect, like all really good shows, stands the test of time. Yes, some of the technology's a little bit, they don't really have, do they have mobiles? I can't remember. But, the shoulder pads are big, but hey, that's coming back. But it stands very, because the writing and, of course, the performances were very, very good. And, of course, her 2IC is quite antagonistic towards her because, obviously, you've got to make a bit of drama apart from the crimes, and we'll get to that, but quite antagonistic towards her. And then, of course, she develops issues of her own. She's hardly a saint. She's terrible with relationships. She has not a very nice drinking problem that she's got to sort out. So she's hardly just this whiter than snow character. They really layered her right up. And so I liked that because she just wasn't the, if you like, the girly swat. She actually had a lot of faults and herself along the way. Mind you, as the blokes did, but it was good to see that. But, she rises above it, and I think she's just a fabulous woman.
Interesting it was written by Linda LaPlante.
Yes, it was. Correct.
And I was just thinking on that one of our other favourite series from back at about the same time was Wire in the Blood.
Yes.
And that was Robson Green.
That music still gets
yeah, I know.
Oh, my goodness me.
And that was written by Val McDermott.
Yes. Fabulous Scottish writer.
And, I think the women had the very graphically twistedly horrible crimes shows sorted.
Well, Linda LaPlante's still going strong, and in fact she wrote a prequel to Prime Suspect, which I read, and they did actually have that as a drama, just how the character in Prime Suspect, how she gets her start and where she comes from and all that kind of thing, which was kind of nice. I kind of, a bit like, when you have Inspector Morse and you have the prequel with Endeavour and whatever. I thought that was pretty cool. But you're right. And Val McDermott is just to get Wire in the Blood. Now, her main character was a male and a female. And so what's another one that you can stream that is absolutely excellent. And a lot of people know Robson Green probably for his fishing shows. He's also the cranky old police detective in Grantchester, which is another fantastic show. But he was the younger, he was the psychologist Tony. And also there was this unrequited bit of passion with the police chief played by Hermione Norris, who's just fabulous. We're using that word a lot. But you're right, Val McDermott, and still writing, she's a Very, very. She's won all of these. What do they have? Those Crime Dagger Awards and things they've got. She's a prolific writer. And then this was translated to the screen. And look, I must admit, I know my sister even says, and we both agree, that music, and I'm sorry I can't acknowledge the composer of the intro music, it just puts chills.
Because you know something truly appalling's
coming. Going on. And I went back and watched that. I mean, this is all, with streaming services and way back. And then I watched it all the way through. And there weren't that many series. It just seemed longer back in the day because you only had one a week, if at all. And then you had to wait. Well, particularly in Australia, these days we get things straight away. But, of course, then you would have to wait probably 2 years behind when it was filmed or shown in the UK. And I know Lisa and I will get onto American programs in Australian, but in the UK. And to see it, and because in that show they brought back characters, and it had a lot more meaning that I could see that only during the course of a week. Well, I'd seen that first episode, and then I'd seen the second series, and I could piece it together in my poor brain. That made so much more sense.
Yeah, I think I do have to say that one of the benefits of using streaming, and I'm going to hand on heart here, say I watch no free to air, everything, we stream everything, is that you can pause and then my mostly deaf partner can go, what did they say? What was that she said?
I have to stop it, and look, I know there's a lot of people who will say, where have we seen her? That's what my husband said. And I stop it and I say, Simon, for God's sake, you're in the moment. You might have someone stalking down a corridor, or the moody, the moody music, or the moody atmosphere of, a Nordic crime series. And where have we seen her before? The moment's broken. I mean, and I pause it and I'll tell him, and then I'll start it again, and the spell is broken.
It's just...
Look, I know these are not the major issues in people's lives, but it can be when I'm sitting there relaxing, watching something that you're really in the zone.
We do it all the time, and maybe it's because we watch so much and we binge it. So you really get into it and you recognize the characters and you're watching it. And there's a guy, I'll have to look up his name later, who's in a lot of shows at the moment. And he's Irish. So if there's a show on that requires Irish characters, he's going to be there. And honestly, because we're binging and we're watching them, and because we're deliberately seeking out similar shows, it takes you a while to get your head around that it's a different character. And what's he doing in this? And it's like, it's not playing that character. It's the same. It's the same guy. But we do it all the time. We stop and we go, now what was she in? Oh. Or I'm worse. I'll go, oh, see that guy? He's married to so-and-so. And then we'll go, oh, really?
Or the other thing too, Lisa, and you've probably had this, and I know a few of our listeners would have had it too. You see there's a character played by someone who's a very well-known actor, and you think, well, they're not doing one episode. So I'll say, I reckon he's probably done it. And Simon, my husband, will say, what? I said, yeah, because they're not just there for one day of a particular series. Although, happy to be proven wrong. There was an incident in something else that Lisa and I are watching. Well, also, we should probably double back to say, going back to Prime Suspect, the development. That was a pivotal television program that then paved the way for a lot of English programs that had the female lead, because you've got to understand the funding to put these programs together. And I can't remember whether it was ITV or BBC who did Prime Suspect. The television execs, with another couple that we absolutely adore, Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders, would say, unless that's why they were so extraordinary, because they wouldn't put the money behind it because there were female leads. Now, these days, of course, they still won't put the money behind it unless you have a well-known female lead. So that's how it's hard for...
I still think that there's a lot of women funding it themselves, though.
Some of those, of course, taking a step back, a lot of executive producers are women. Yeah. So and the directors are women, and we're not just saying it's just a male female thing, but to have a female lead. Now, Helen Mirren was well known, but not like she is now, where she's star power. This is all before I think Hunt for Red October or whatever, all of these programs that she was in, or movies, and of course certainly well before her Academy Award in The Queen, which was, I think she just morphed into Queen Elizabeth in that. I could not distinguish between her and the Queen. I thought that was an extraordinary performance. And she always looks fabulous on the red carpet, which is really important. But, so she was a known quantity, but it was still considered a massive gamble to have a female writer. Now, I've no doubt LaPlante was probably also an EP on it as well. But even for women to have executive producing credits, because that's obviously skin in the game, you're getting a bit of money out of it, and not just the rights to your product or her writing. But now it's quite common that you'll see the writer will be the executive producer of these programs. And look, just to, move away, that something that Lisa and I are watching at the moment, and which is this evolution that we're watching these programs, is Slow Horses, which is on streaming. It's on Apple. And yes, I know you've got to get another streaming service to watch something, but Lisa and I are incredibly snobby about what we watch. We're very, very, very picky. And Slow Horses is fabulous, bloody wonderful. And what's great is you've got a couple of Academy Award winners in there to boot in TV, Gary Oldman and Dame Kristen Scott Thomas. I don't think Gary's a Sir yet, is he? I don't think he is.
Well, if he's playing Jackson Lamb, he's not likely to.
But I'm also reading the books, and I don't know whether I mentioned this before, but I think I might have. Slow Horses, written by a man called Mick Herron, who was doing okay, and it's the classic where I think a producer picked up the novel at an airport shop and started reading it and thinking, oh, this would be great, and then actually he's an actor, but he's actually the writer and producer of this program, a guy called Will Smith, who was in the thick of it, which is, look, if you like politics, really, that is just the most fabulous program. Swearing alert. I think there's more swearing than it is non-swearing in that one. But I'll go into that too, Lisa, if you don't know that one. But Slow Horses, it is, as they will say in the trailer, it's not James Bond and Aston Martins and martinis. It's very much about these ex-MI5 that have done something wrong, so they can't, because of PC-ness or something, they can't sack them. So they put them in purgatory of a place called Slough House, which is not in Slough, but may as well be. And, of course, they're called the Slow Horses, and they're just waiting for them to resign. And but obviously it's lots of fun. Anyway, so this guy picked these books up, and, of course, it's just gone bing. And I think I remember saying that when we first watched it, you see, listening to the opening song, you think, geez, that guy sounds like Mick Jagger. Not Mick Jagger. Sure enough, it's Mick Jagger, written, performed by Mick Jagger. And you think, how on earth? And then, of course, I had to go and do a little bit of ferreting, went down a rabbit hole. And for whatever reason, I think Will Smith, who is the writer-producer and an actor, said he wanted Mick Jagger to do it. And so people said, that'd be ridiculous. Stones are touring or whatever they do. And I think he had some people that knew some people that ended up knowing some people that knew Mick's people or something. And when the message finally went through, Sir Michael Jagger said, oh, I've read all those books. Yes, I'll do it. So no flies on Sir Michael Jagger, as if we ever thought there would be. But anyway, so that's lots of fun. And he sort of sounds a bit half drunk singing it, actually, that kind of, because that's kind of, it's not your slick guys, it's just where they work and what they do. But look, it is absolutely excellent. I've actually bought the 8 novels in an omnibus, and I'm actually reading those. A little bit more background because I just love it so much, and it really is laugh out loud in some parts. Mick Herron is a terrific writer, and now he's won all these awards, and they've all gone ballistic, and people wait with bated breath. I think we're up to the 4th. So a series is a book.
Yeah.
So I think it's the 4th series, isn't it? Yeah, and it's just dropped, and so I think they've just had the 2nd episode. But it's terrific, and and then yes, there's women in that. In fact, they give as good as they get.
Oh yes.
I mean, certainly Gary Oldman's the son, but you've also very much up there is Dame Kristen Scott Thomas, who plays a character called Diana Taverner, but they all call it behind her back Lady Di. So there's some lovely cultural references there. It's just fantastic, and I'm just going to say I'm glad there isn't smell-o-vision, because Jackson Lamb is no James Bond.
No, he's definitely
But
not.
I highly recommend that, because I think one of the reasons Lisa and I get a bit of a kick out of this is because, I find it incredibly relaxing when I'm watching something really good. I do a lot of reading and that kind of thing, but sometimes it's just a matter of, we're all going in so many different directions, and my husband and I just at night we'll just sit down to try and watch something we haven't either of us hadn't seen that we agree on. It'd be much easier, Lisa, if it was just you and I in the lounge room. I could show you. But what we are doing is going back to this, and this is the absolute antithesis of what we're talking about, strong women in TV show. We started to watch, because we had never finished it, Mad Men. I do struggle. My mother will not watch it because she says, I lived through that. I don't need to see it again. It is a real struggle. But we thought that was classic of those where it was on free-to-air back when. I mean, it's extraordinary how recently that streaming is. It's so recent. You just forget. When was it on? And it just, busy lives, and obviously the kids were younger, and the business, working and all that kind of thing. So you just kind of, rather than buying the box set, you can find it and you can stream it. And I do like that about that thing. But I think we're just about to finish the second season. But, oh, boy, I mean, John Hamm is absolutely fabulous, of course. And I love all the fashions and the way they refer. They're very clever how they drop in what year it is. It might be on a paper or a particular world event. But it's, oh, boy, it's... Just get that for me, will you, sweetheart?
We were talking before we came in here about generational things, and we quite often bring it that up. And it just came to my head a show that was deliberately about generational change. And there were 2 series. I think there was only 2. And that was Life on Mars.
Yes, wonderful.
And, oh, gosh, I love that show. But you get John Sim. This was my introduction to John Sim, I have to say.
Seen him before.
And he's
fabulous.
Whatever year it was set in. And again, this is from the early 2000s.
Yes, it was.
Because I think Alex was quite young, or maybe the late 2000s actually. But anyway, the premise is he falls over, hits his head.
No, it was. It was definitely in that. Yes, it was late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
And he wakes up in 1973. And
because he has an accident. We won't say too much, but he has a traumatic event.
And he wakes up in 1973, and he's still his self, and he's still a policeman, but now he's a policeman in 1973 as opposed to the 2000s, and the cultural shock, the absolute cultural shock.
And he may as well be on Mars.
Life on Mars.
Correct.
And then it was followed...
And they used David Bowie, of course.
A second season where it was Ashes to Ashes, and now it was a female cop, and she too has a traumatic accident, and she wakes up in 1984-ish, maybe 1985, and even the culture shock for that, going back to, oh God, imagine having to go back to that here, Manda.
I do remember a scene in that with the lovely Liz Smith, fabulous actress. I'm saying it's fabulous a lot, I'm sorry. And the first time I had seen her, and he's making dinner. So first of all, she's saying, oh, well, that's very, unique. And, you're cooking me dinner. And I think, I can't remember, but say it's something like chicken, but it might have been apricots with it. Or when she's going, oh, fruit with the meal. I always remember that because A, she couldn't believe a guy was cooking for her. And secondly, that there was actually fruit in the meal. But it was just really lovely. So, look, we're on that note, that's making me feel a bit thirsty and hungry. We can have a little bit of a short break and then come back and solve the world in the second half.
Thank you very much.
At P2P, you will have a tailored consultant that has an expert knowledge in a particular industry.
We have great technology in place. We have a really great relationships with lots of different clients and a lot of candidates in the market. We have specialist consultants within the team.
Internationally recognised, so there is an opportunity to collaborate with many different branches. But from a proactive perspective, we are able to answer clients' needs.
I'm really proud of what we stand for and how we operate. We always operate with integrity, professionalism, and we really pride ourselves on providing the best service to our client.
And we're back. So we've just finished that up, just talking about Life on Mars, and we were just saying that Keely Hawes played the detective in the Ashes to Ashes, and Philip Glenister, who's a favourite of both Lisa and mine. I mean, we often say, Lisa and I say, that the depth of talent, and I know we haven't gone over the pond to the United States, but we're just sticking for the UK. The depth of talent they have in the UK is just breathtaking. And it goes, a lot of them got to start in some of those soap operas like EastEnders or Coronation Street, way, Sarah Lancashire, way back in the day. They can do anything. And they totally submerge. You don't see that full face of makeup that, look, the Americans do. You know, it always drives me nuts when you see the woman waking up, both of them, men or women, waking up full face of makeup and the hair perfect. You do not go to bed like that.
Well,
you don't, and you don't wake up like that.
And all the American police detectives who look perfect.
And they look good. Don't get me wrong; they look gorgeous, and I love the hair, and Olivia Benson, and the whole thing. It's just great. But the grittiness, I think that's what you and I like, that grittiness and reality that the UK do. And they've got the benefit, of course, of the wonderful atmospherics of moors and fog and all that sort of thing, which is great. But there are so many actors and actresses that you see, and yes, some of them do go on and get the Academy Awards, Olivia Colman or Vanessa Redgrave. I mean, just these wonderful, where they've started. I don't know whether it's because a lot of them do rep and they tour and they do Shakespeare all the time, but they're not afraid. If there's plastic surgery, it's at a minimum. They can all move their faces. They look exactly like the characters they're meant to play. And, some of those things that we watch, Lisa, that, they in the police procedurals, and they're dealing with sort of the people that down on their luck types, and they're in these massive project or council flats. I mean, you cannot believe they're acting.
No,
it is just extraordinary.
It's so legitimate, isn't it? You feel it. You can feel that the lifts are broken and they're full of wee, and there's just hopelessness. You get it. You absolutely get it.
And their clothing, and you realise you have to step away sometimes. And this is what I do if I really get incredibly involved in something that might have a really disturbing subject matter. I have to step away and I think they're acting. Someone is there saying cut, and they go home to their families. I have to think like that. But, just they're just absolutely magnificent, I think. And then they can do comedy, they can do drama, they can do anything.
I thought it was interesting. I thought there was going to potentially be a shift in America when Kate Winslet did Mayor of Easttown, because she brought that grit.
That's terrific.
I mean, here's this woman who...
and Jean Smart was in that, and she was excellent. As her mother. You're right. You totally believe it. And good murder mystery.
And she was bringing that grittiness because she, she didn't go on a crash diet to lose 30 kilos to put a pair of jeans on. She was looking absolutely
like
normal.
all of us do.
There were times where she looked haggard and rough and around the edges, and like she'd had a hard night, and that was the first time I'd seen that translated, really the first time I'd seen that translated into America. And it was done by an English woman. And I suspect that she fought hard to be able to put that level of reality in to an American show. I've always wanted to do a second season. Kate Winslet, if you're listening, please go back to Easttown.
But it's not to say we don't love a collision of strong women and comedy and politics, of course, has got to be Veep for me. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, I mean, the clothing was it was apt, but she's also a woman that, look, whether, Julie, you've had a little bit of that, I don't know, but you look pretty real to me. And I thought she's had so many awards, that woman. But but it was written by an Englishman, Armando Iannucci, who wrote The Thick of It. Got to watch The Thick of It. And so they had some fabulous guest stars, Stephen Fry and in it too. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name, but the woman who played the Swedish Prime Minister, and you've seen her in millions of things. She's an English actress. But look, that was fantastic because that certainly had a grittiness again. Selena Meyer was absolutely the most hideous human being, and you could not take your eyes off her. She's about 5'2", tiny little thing. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and when she just ran rings around all of them all the time. She was awful to them, and she was absolutely she had the star power to put behind that, of course, because it was made within the last 10 years. So of course, she had a star power from Seinfeld, as we know, and then the New Adventures of Old Christine. I can never remember if it's that or it's the Old Adventures of New Christine. I can never remember which one, but she won Emmys for that too. So of course, when they were coming to play this dreadful piece of work, Selena Meyer in Veep, you just knew. And so, of course, at the moment, as we're recording this, we're in the last, under 2 months, I think, to the US elections.
53 days, I think.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
It'll be 53 days now, I think.
And, of course, she's been interviewed because there's a current female vice president in the United States, Madam Vice President, and going for, and as we all know from the TV show with Selena Meyer, that's all she ever wants to do. She will sacrifice absolutely everybody and everything to sit behind the Resolute desk. And look, plenty of blokes have done that. There's no doubt about it. But of course, she's been asked whether there's certain similarities. She said, "Oh no," and then she sort of made there were similarities with other candidates, which we won't go into, rather than the current vice president. But they did that so well, and I know that. I had to do a bit of reading, and the political people inside the Beltway in DC probably thought they didn't even go far enough at times. But look, I don't care. I love looking at. She looks great in clothes, and the clothes she wore, and the fact that she'd then take the stilettos off and she'd be walking around in the slippers, and then she put the stilettos on because she's so tiny, but she rose above being a female. I mean, although I just love the clothing, but she rose above that. She was just an appalling piece of work. And the way the last episode, I thought it was done without fear or favour. I'm sure Louis-Dreyfus had a hand to say, look, and she had no redeeming features, this woman. And the way she chewed up and spat out people, and that's not just a gender thing. And I love that, the fact that it could have been played by a man, but in this case by a woman, and how that they really tied it. The last episode was excellent, and they brought back a lot of characters, and they tied it up a little bit like they did with Seinfeld, actually. They brought back a lot of characters, and they finished it off. But I would really recommend that. I thought that was really incredibly well done. There is a language warning on it, so if you're not into a little bit of language on that, I understand. That's not everyone's cup of tea. But in fact, what I thought was interesting, the episode that really had the most graphic language was directed by her husband. And in fact, one of her sons appeared in it too. And I always remembered that because she was pregnant when she made Seinfeld. And so you could tell when Elaine had a bag or a pillow or the hands crossed or shot from the waist up. And here are these, there's her son who's this, like her husband, Brad Hall, Charlie Hall's tall, handsome young man. Of course, she treated him like rubbish as well, and itself was fabulous. Anyway, so that's a really nice, as I said, I think going from prime suspect, if I could circle back, to something like Veep, where it didn't matter that she was a woman, she was just horrific.
And because we've managed to bring politics in, and you've got 5 minutes, Manda.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Let's do our own little debate review in 5 minutes or less.
This week, as we're recording this, because we know people listen at all sorts of different times, there was the first debate with the relatively new Democratic candidate, Vice President Harris, with the incumbent candidate for the Republican Party, Donald J. Trump. And it was very interesting. And look, everyone's got their opinions on how it went. All I would say is I think it was a very good advertisement, and all I'll say is for preparation. I don't think you can wing anything, and when you have a different opponent, they'll do different things. I also think that whenever you're in a debate, whether you're in year 9, junior high school, your opponents will try and bait you. I'd recommend don't take the bait. But irrespective of which way, look, from a female perspective, I thought it's terrific. Not just because I wouldn't just vote for a woman just because she's a woman. I just wouldn't do that. There has to be something a little bit more there. But I could tell, as just somebody watching it as a female, what I thought was very interesting, and that the polling coming out of the United States, the massive gender gap, it is huge, and very interesting whether there's still people that, apart from policies, but people vote for a whole bunch of different reasons, and people sometimes can just vote for the way a candidate makes them feel, and that's very true for Donald Trump supporters. They're very, very rusted on. They can do any, and they will always vote for him. So he makes them feel good, and that's why they vote. Whether you and I agree with that, that's a fact of life, and that's important to them. And the same with Vice President Harris. So whether the way, and maybe there's an element of that can't envisage a female being the top to deal with leaders around the world. I would argue, I thought, in my opinion, she actually looked taller than him. I'm just looking at the visuals. A lot of pundits say you should turn down the sound, just look at the optics, and they have split screens, which is you can look at both the candidates. You can tell a lot with body language. And so she's not a very tall woman. She'd be about 5'4" in the old money, and I think former President Trump's about 6'2" or 3. So he's a big guy, but he hunched over his lectern. And that made him look small, in my opinion. If people listening to this might completely disagree, and that's fine. I just thought, which I thought was interesting, that she was ramrod straight, but also she would, with her delivery. And what surprised me about it too was the fact that, there were holes in some of her arguments that a debater then goes in and drives the Mack truck through because there's a hole. But you've got to be nimble on your feet, and I think overwhelmingly both supporters and detractors of former President Trump have said she completely eviscerated him. Now, other people are going to say, my son thinks it was a draw. So, look, I think the common theme is that I think I would just go back to saying anything and I don't think any of us can underestimate, not for you and I here chatting here, Lisa, is underestimate the enormity of that stage. I'm talking from a metaphorical perspective. That is the most visible, biggest stage. Every country in the world looks at the American elections. Whether you like it or not, that is what happened. That is a reality, and you've got two people there, no notes, piece of paper, a pen, glass. You can't, or there's very strict rules. They couldn't ask questions of each other. They had 2 ad breaks of 4 minutes. It was very tightly controlled of what you could and couldn't do. I would prefer them to have more interaction, that they can ask each other questions, but in this debate they didn't. But anyway, I would just go back to saying women aren't necessarily, yes, we are known as girly swats, and you prepare, and I think the results were evident.
I think this is my personal view, I think Mr. Trump and his vice president candidate grossly underestimate the female vote. Grossly underestimate the fact that JD, they both have come out and been quite dismissive about Taylor Swift.
Yes, so that came 27 minutes after the end of the debate, that endorsement on Instagram.
And both of them have, and I understand why they're trying to downplay it and say it's not such a big deal and so forth, but I think they're completely failing to understand that there are a lot of young women or women of all ages. Taylor Swift appeals to quite a broad range of people, and they underestimate them at the apparel.
Well, it's interesting just on that. So a few political pundits like, pop singer endorsing. I think what was interesting about that post, and I'm always interested in these cultural phenomena, and that young woman is a cultural phenomenon, even if I barely know what she sings, but that's okay. I mean, I recognise, and my husband, because we've got 2 brain cells, we recognise she's a cultural phenomenon. So she's got 283 million followers on Instagram. No, they're not all in the United States. I know that, they're all over the world. But what she did, and it was the way it was worded, apart from she signed it off childless cat lady, but how it was worded was that she looked at the things important to her, and she was endorsing Vice President Harris and Tim Walz based on what her research, but she was encouraging her. So she wasn't telling them how to vote. She said, this is what I'm doing, but I would encourage you to look at what's important to you. But what she did, she included a registration link, because as we all know, where all this money's raised is to get people out to cast a vote. And that's why they break it down by all these demographics and states and whatever that we really don't. We have a bit of it, but it's compulsory to vote in Australia. We've got council elections tomorrow, and we've all voted. We have to vote for that, even at local government level. But with this link, it took people to how to register to vote, or double check you are registered to vote if you already have, because there's been a little bit of voter roll purging in some states, and that's a discussion for another day. And so what I read last night, they're tracking based on that link to register what traffic it's or what traction it's getting. And I read last night, Sydney time, that up to that point was 380,000 registration to vote. Now, I'm not going to be naive to say that every single person registering is going to vote based on total. Very probably likely, but may not. But 380,000, you dismiss that as your peril. And I did see that J.D. Vance said, pop singer, and she's a billionaire and she doesn't relate. Well, if she doesn't relate, she's got a lot of people with friendship bracelets and going to these things that do relate, because I think what they appreciate is the fact that she's a very talented young woman. She's just had this massive world tour, so she's very, very topical. Even though Vice President Harris uses freedom from Beyonce with her permission, and she's a massive donor, and she's a massive cultural icon herself, of course, but Swift is doing this massive tour. I mean, gosh, my son's girlfriend was nearly in tears when she couldn't get tickets the first time around. Anyway, she eventually went and everyone was happy. But I'm just saying that she's self-made.
Yeah. And
that's the American dream.
Yep.
And wherever she goes, she puts, from what I gather, donates or gives money to various causes in whatever city she's performing in. So she has a huge relatability. And once again, I would suggest it would have been much better, in my opinion, if I can give some advice to the vice presidential candidate for the GOP, to Mr. Vance, to say, acknowledge that she's a phenomenon. Her views are different to what they're offering, and counter it some way, not with Kid Rock, but I would counter it some way, but not rather than just missing her out of hand. I just think once again, you do that at your peril.
Absolutely. And on that note, folks, it's goodbye from me.
Yeah, and it's goodbye from me, and we'll see you next time.
See you
Bye.
soon.
And of course, if you would like to listen to the SkirtWork podcast, you can find us anywhere where you get your podcasts. And you can also watch us on YouTube, heaven forbid. Lisa and I would much prefer this to be audio, but no, we're being videoed as well. So please subscribe, send us a comment. We would love to hear from you.